Right, hello everybody and welcome back to Between Two Fans. This is Stevie P and your boy Dan Scholtz, and we are going to be chatting about a lot of sport over the next hour. Lots happened the last week. The Premier League title race heating up. FA Cup final has been locked in. The IPL has eventually moved past the halfway stage, whilst the URC is really starting to heat up. So plenty to get through in the next 45 minutes to an hour. We've also got confirmation of the autumn internationals down in November with some really cool fixtures there. And Chasing the Sun has wrapped up. So we'll be talking a little bit about that as well. First of all, Dan, how are you doing? How is life over in the UK?
Stevie, it's not summer, which it promised to be, and more so, I am being pulled in multiple directions by my following teams. You know, Liverpool go and disappoint me, just go and exit Europe. It's like, okay, well, I can cope with that. And then Stormers go and lose to Ospreys at home before Liverpool then go and get a win in the Premier League versus Fulham, which doesn't seem like a very big result, but it felt monumental for me. Just
I suppose all things comparative, yeah. After a tough week, needed it.
It's been a tough couple of weeks, and we've been sliding in every direction, both from a Stormers and Liverpool perspective. So we're holding on to something, and that was on Sunday just to end off the weekend. Fortunately. But Stevie, we have a prediction show, and we need to.
Well, we don't really. We've just got a we've just got a how much is Steve beating Dan's show.
I said we have a show, not a competition, bro.
Yeah, fair.
But the competition goes as Steve and I predict on 3 different sporting fixtures over the weekend, and see who gets the closer of the two correct, gaining points, so on and so forth. Stevie, you are currently leading 8-2. This is pretty unassailable, some might say. Alas, let's go through last week's fixtures. It started off with Bulls Munster, where we actually tried a new format and we guessed at the same time, both saying Bulls by 12, a well-rested Bulls versus a travelling Munster. And how wrong were we? Munster getting the better than Munster, winning by 5 points, winning 27 points to 22. Stevie, your prediction of 15 was much worse. Not much, but it was worse than my Bulls.
It was 3 points. Yeah, relax. And I had to go higher because we said the same thing. Whoa. Let's add some context here.
Small wins. So second fixture was Glasgow versus Sharks. Sharks taking a second string team. I hadn't considered that very well going into this, but Glasgow ending out winners there, 21 points to 10. So it was Glasgow by 11. Stevie, your prediction was Glasgow by 8. Mine was Glasgow by 3. So that draws it at 1-1. Moving on to the FA Cup, and we saw goals, Stevie. We saw goals. Your prediction was Manchester City 3. Mine was Manchester City 3-1 to Manchester City, and mine was 3-2 to City. Ended up 1-0. So we can choose to go on goal difference.
I feel like you need this.
Hey?
I feel like you need this, to be fair.
I think I need it, bro. I think my goal difference is good. It was a closer game than, both our threes were wrong. Both our twos and your one was wrong. You know, I'm going to go with goal difference. That's the next big thing. So, as I said, small wins, Stevie. We are turning around the ship. So that takes it to now a very tight contest of 8-3.
There we go.
And we move. It's this new format of predicting at the same time. You see, you've been weaseling me on letting me go first and just edging me out 1 point wins. Yeah, I've got your number now. So 8-3 it is. So I'm taking that momentum into the week. But let's jump right into what's been pulling on all the South African heartstrings for the last 5 weeks of Chasing the Sun, Stevie. The final episode finishing probably the best rugby documentary ever.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just It's such a big story, and I mean, we always I wouldn't say I like the champions, but I mean, there's always so many other things, factors, and stuff like that when you look at like South African rugby and South African sport and stuff like that. I mean, there are very few South African sports stories you can tell which aren't very inspirational and have got so much, to it and so many layers to it. And when you're suddenly looking at a group of 33 guys, there's always going to be so many different stories because of the diversity, So I think it just lends. I mean, the scripts write themselves really, and this is a World Cup where the script couldn't have been written any better. So I think it's, for me, I just hope that the success of it will lead to more rugby documentaries. Like, I mean, the fact that we've now got documentaries on the Six Nations, for example. I mean, when they did the All or Nothing All Blacks, I mean, I absolutely loved that, and that was a while ago. So we need more of this. When it comes to rugby, especially because I think we need more characters in rugby. We need more. I wouldn't say we need more individualism, but we need to see more. I want to be attached to players a bit more than just he's a cool player. I want to be able to watch a player and say, "Jeepers," but his story is really cool, and the reason that he does this, for example, is very cool. So I think that's what is always the best part. I was very chuffed to see the coach camp back with some of the being able to hear some of the coach conversations during the final, because that's always my favorite part.
Exactly what I was going to say. It's like, as much as we got to know the players, how much more does the whole South African rugby world now know about the quality of Felix Jones, Don Human, and, it sounds silly to say, but head coach Jacques Nienaber, who typically kind of still sits in the shadows in terms of how loud his voice is in the room, of Rassie Erasmus on in a kind of outward viewing perspective as like your general supporter. You kind of still see Rassie as that focal point, but gaining access to the back room, you can really see who pulls weight, and it's clear that those four between Nienaber, Jones, Human, and Rassie are really steering the ship in a big way.
Yeah, I think for me, you look at people sort of talk about, because Jacques is such a quiet person when he does press conferences and stuff like that. He's a very soft-spoken, quiet. I wouldn't say shy, but he doesn't like the limelight. And then you sort of see some of that speech he gave, for example, ahead of the final, and the whole thing about, scripting his story and stuff like that. And you sit there, you turn around, and you're like, no, this guy's the real deal.
The tension built up in that build up towards the final, like, it gives me goosebumps now, but that speech was just out of this world. And it was interesting because I saw recently Jamal Hamilton spoke to, I think, Artie Severe on Rugby Pass, and spoke about like the emotional drivers, and essentially that there really weren't that many for the All Blacks beyond what kind of going on the pitch and personal and carrying the All Black jersey. And we know that they have obviously the haka, and they have that heritage that goes along with that. But I do think it's almost a superpower that the Springboks have that's can't just be replicated by any other nation, in that they can go to that level because that narrative, and it's been driven in by Rassie and Jacques over the last how many years. You are the underdog. Everyone's going against you. Write your own script. Don't let them tell you what it'll be like. It's us versus them. And that just plays so much into going that extra mile, that extra 1%. And when you add those up, you realize why the Springboks were able to win 3 knockout games in a row by 1 point.
Yeah, I mean, we've basically won 3 out of 4 World Cups purely based on the shit show that's going on in the country, and just sort of like, the external factors leading into over and above performances. I mean, 1995 is obviously like so documented, the fact that, again, we had no rights of winning it. We weren't a good side. We had just come back from readmission, for example.
Yeah.
And there was this expectation and all this idea that, well, you guys have got to win it for the country. In 2019, it's like, well, you guys got to win it for the country. And now this was very much the narrative there again. So I mean, if things down here ever sort itself out full time, the box could be in a bit of trouble. But until then, we'll ride a bit of a wave. I think it's just you can just see such a special group. I think it also brings you to the rawness of rugby. Obviously, the Pumas Rhinox scene where he's told, and obviously in the back of playing the semi-final, you're not going to be involved. My Liebach, who started every game, bar, I think it was Samoa or Tonga. Tonga, he started every single game besides that, including the semi-final, and then gets dropped from the full final completely.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it was tough. It was real, and I mean, when you see emotion, like the emotion from Dwayne, but then the tear that fucking rolled down Kwacha's cheek, that had me. Like when you see someone like Kwacha, like man, he says nothing, right, and seemingly feels nothing, and clearly does. Obviously, I'm not being completely naive to that, but when you see someone like that, we know these people. Like these are like people we interact with in South Africa, and we know of friends of. These are not emotional people, and the fact that they can get wound up in something like this just shows how much it does mean to them. Just phenomenal, and as much as like that emotion paired in it, still I think my favorite moment of the final was Sia calling out the French press, just exactly how it is. They are just so cut, obviously going after Bongi and the whole lead up to the final, and trying to kind of essentially get some sort of punishment on him prior to the final, not a week later. But just saying it how it is.
Yeah, no, and I got my first real experience during the British and Irish Lions series. Being part of those press conferences and stuff like that, seeing the English media and how cutthroat they are, and it's always been known as sort of tabloid media, isn't it? It's not. It's the sport itself is always second to any sort of big story that you can find outside of the game itself. Certainly not for the purists when it comes to sort of the journalism and stuff like that, but something that's a format that's worked for them for years and years and years. So it was good to see him calling it out, and especially because it was a World Cup final week, and and I think that they were quite clever in terms of putting up a darn human to the press conference who's not going to say anything, and he couldn't give a damn, type of thing. So I think that's the reality, and I think what really struck me was. Everybody sort of, when they kept asking, asking Sia, how's Tom Currie? And he said, well, ask about how Bongi Manambi is looking. How's he feeling being accused of this when it hasn't even been proven? So, that was quite a little hit back at some of the press. So I think it was good to see. And the final performance itself, it takes us back to exactly how close it was. You forget how it sort of ebbed and flowed. And it's almost frustrating.
Miss kick. I must.
Yeah, I know. They didn't show much in the second half, to be honest.
Yeah, where they were clapping us.
Yeah, no, exactly.
They were absolutely rolling us. They missed small parts of the game, and I would have loved to have seen more celebrations in South Africa at the end, just because we saw it ourselves, or I saw through the lens of a screen, but you were there in person, and just like that overwhelming kind of joy and emotion that everyone felt. They touched on it at the end, but I felt they could have gone a little bit deeper in there. But bar that, I mean, really flawless.
Yeah, and then apparently Chasing Sun 3 is coming in 2028, I suppose, when it would be released if it were to be. According to David Bill says we're not done, going for the three-peat.
My question is, do they release Chasing Sun if we don't win the World Cup?
No.
You don't think so? So Chasing Sun 3 doesn't happen.
I think it probably does. It makes too much money.
I think it's become bigger than winning, and it'll get shown either way, and it'll be a different.
Well, I mean, Australia's one is being released. It has been released. With the whole sort of Eddie Jones thing and stuff like that. So I think you put so much time and effort into it. I suppose you kind of have to.
Yeah.
Exactly. Not going to be quite the same, is it? If we go out like the group stages and you have this whole week of do it for South Africa, and then you're like
crying for the wrong reasons, bro.
Yeah, exactly. and back we go. But
who wants to relive that trauma?
yeah, literally right. Sit down and tell us how much you stuffed up. Okay, well,
But Stevie, let's talk about South Africa largely stuffing up. Bar the Lions in last week's URC fixtures. I mean,
it's suffering from success over here. It's been tough down here, having to carry the country. This is
you're suffering from success, but you couldn't count on any of the other South Africans doing you any favors to bump you up.
No, you guys are useless. You had one blooming job. It was the Stormers. That's the only one I really needed to happen. It's just the Stormers. And I thought that was the most sure win of the weekend. I was like, yeah, sorted.
We didn't even predict on it. We didn't even predict on it. We would have, had we thought it was going to be a close game, we would have put a prediction down.
Yeah, and I mean, it's ridiculous. We pumped Leinster by like 30 odd points, and we haven't moved log position.
Yeah, but okay. First of all, I'm just going to quickly take you off your high horse. Just everyone who wasn't watching, this is a Leicester B team and maybe B plus C, because they're keeping keeping all the island internationals at home for their.
I reckon that Leinster side beats the Osprey side you guys lost to.
Possibly. I think. Anyways, let's quickly recap the fixtures. Big one, Ulster getting a late win versus Cardiff, 19 points to 17. Glasgow Warriors moving 1 point off of Leinster, right at the top of the table, beating Sharks 21 points to 10, as we earlier said. Benetton blowout win 36 points to 19 versus Dragons. Lions 44 points to 12 versus Leinster. Bulls going down, losing 22 points to 27 in the game of the weekend versus Munster. Stormers, again, losing at home, 21 points to 27 versus Ospreys. Edinburgh, a massive win versus Scarlets, 43 points to 18. And Connacht, a massive win versus Zebra, 54 points to 16. Stevie, let's first finish up on the Lions. Good win, necessary win.
It's a bizarre win, really. I mean, statistically, like, was it like 30% territory, like 30% possession, and just so to go and win by
in like the 50-something minute, wasn't it?
Leinster,
yeah, those points.
It was the definition of just dogged defense and then counter-attacking, rugby. I mean, the first try that was created within the first minute was gorgeous. Snare Nahamba sort of cut out pass, taking out 3 Leinster defenders, creating that 2-1 situation. I mean, you watch that and you think, oh, that's next level. But then an intercept, also the nice try, the third try down the right hand side there. So there was obviously a bit of fortune, but there's some really nice rugby being played by the Lions, which is really. And I think especially when you're looking at Leinster, who do play rush defense, obviously there's sort of the Jacques Niamba system, but with players who haven't played it as much. And I think that was exploited very, very well.
As much.
Yeah.
These players obviously not on the first team.
Yeah, so I think the main thing, and the funny thing is, Marius Lowe afterwards, they was told, how special was that? He said he's incredibly disappointed in the performance. They said they expected themselves to be a lot better, and they said that there wasn't the standard that they expected of themselves and that they expected to play it. So I really enjoyed that part, because that's a mentality shift. The fact that they can beat Leinster, and they can acknowledge the fact that it wasn't the best Leinster side, but still, you've got to beat them by a bonus point, 44 points to 12. You would have taken that result and scoreline any day of the week beforehand, but the first thing you're saying is you didn't play well. Yeah. So hopefully that bodes well for this weekend, because they need another big shift. They're up against Munster. Ironically, a bonus point win, for example, this weekend would actually put them 4 points behind Munster if they were to keep Munster without scoring any points. But this, for me, is the big game for the Lions. I think, moving into the last few weeks of the URC, and you've got 11th to 5th separated by 3 points. I think if you want to make that top 8, you got to win 3 out of the next 4.
Yeah, everyone's going to get 3 out of the next 4, and
I think the Stormers have made their life a bit more difficult.
Very, very difficult. Yeah, I think so. Stormers losing by 6 there to Ospreys, and that was with a final minute penalty try. So we were well beaten, and kind of didn't really get closer. I think we didn't respect them enough. We're trying to play far too expansively when we don't need to, just kind of flinging the ball left, right, and center. I think it made us pay. I think we need to humble ourselves a little bit. Now is a horrible time of the season to decide to do that. But, I think to expect just to, have that home ground advantage and play how you want to play is, I think, a little bit arrogant. And to, I think, have a wake-up call. Fair play to Ospreys. They said, we're going to come to Cape Town, a place where you guys have lost only twice, I think, in the last 2 years, and we're going to take the game to you. And they did. They managed to kind of securely get a win for themselves, and now firmly put themselves in that top 8 race, which, as you mentioned, is heating up. But let's quickly go to Bulls Munster. Obviously, a lot of talk. Bulls over the last 2 weeks resting all their players in the European Champions Cup, and as a result, keeping a lot of their best players home for this game of the versus Munster, essentially looking to get into essentially the top three, possibly even top two, hoping for maybe a home semi or home final, and then going on to lose to Munster. Obviously, a red card for Johan Goosen there, but what a monumental result that is for Munster, Stevie.
Yeah, Munster showing up. They've been thereabouts this season, but they've had lots and lots of injury issues. And for a change, they could pick a much stronger side. I think people in the week were saying, that's a good Munster side, because when they can pick their best players, there's a lot of world-class players. I mean, Jack Crowley continues to look, like an international season fly half, which ironically he's not even playing fly half full-time for, less than a year, really. I mean, he was kind of shipped into that position late last year in the URC. In the playoffs, and you look at the progression he's had since then. You've got a Peter O'Mahony, Ty Byrne, Arceus Neyman. There are some world-class players in that Munster side. Anton Fischer's a very exciting young player. Yeah. And the Bulls were not accurate enough, really. They had their chances, especially early in that second half. They were dominating them. They were all over them, but couldn't really make it. Couldn't establish that decent cushion. And then, clear as day, a red card against Johan Goosen. I don't think anybody can complain about that. I think some people are talking about the Sebastian de Klerk red sort of head clash when the two players are going. I mean, but I don't understand that whole. I don't know what people are sort of moaning about. You've got two players going for the ball. It's within milliseconds that one sort of gets to slightly before the other one, and there is a head clash, and it is purely a rugby incident, as rugby incidents go. So that for me was a bit of a non-instant, but Johan Goosen there was no mitigation there. I mean, he was upright, he came through quickly with force, never tried to get down. It doesn't get much easier than that.
Obviously, that was it. It wasn't malicious, it wasn't on purpose, but it's still clear as day. He was completely in the wrong there. He has to be more in control of his body. Essentially, can't just run head on to while rush defending your opposition, and then when you hit them with the head, have no repercussions. But I think there needs to be a lot of credit given to Munster. I mean, they came and won the URC at a sold-out DHL stadium of 50-something thousand people last year, so they know how to cope under the pressure and the South African intensity that the stadiums bring. And it's pretty, as you said, similar team, very, very strong. And they did that again versus the Bulls. They kind of said, okay, we'll go to Loftus at elevation and we'll get it done, even though the Bulls have rested a lot of their key players. So outside shout to Munster, as you said, a lot of noise has been made of them. But very exciting, as you mentioned, going to the last 4 weeks. Most exciting games upcoming this weekend. I'd say Stormers, Leinster is now going to be big. Probably another Leinster second team. Stormers are going to have to try and make sure they get the win now. Hopefully a bounce back performance. Bulls Ospreys now all of a sudden looks a lot more exciting. And then Lions Munster. I'm kind of counting out the Sharks and playing their full strength team until they play the Challenge Cup next weekend. But they're also versus the Scarlets away. But otherwise, another 3 home fixtures for the South African team.
Yeah, in theory, I mean, obviously the Sharks are pretty irrelevant, but it needs to be a clean sweep for the other South African sides. Bulls are at risk of being dragged back into this top 8 fight. They currently sit on 46 points. So yes, they've got some space between the likes of Edinburgh. Well, they lose this weekend, for example, and the results go the right way. And for example, Benton can go ahead of them, Stormers can go within 1, Ospreys can go within 1, and Edinburgh can go within 2.
True.
So if they were to have a nightmare performance this weekend, then they could be dragged back into this race. Because the Lions can also get within, sort of 2 points of them. So or 3 points of them. So it's I don't think there will be, but they certainly can't rest in their laurels. They can't afford to slip up because they lose 2 or 3 matches all of a sudden at the back end. And not necessarily that they won't be in the top 8, but they could suddenly fall down to 6, 7 and all of a sudden be traveling for that quarterfinal where they were a couple of weeks ago looking to try and push for a home final, let alone a home semi-final.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think Stormers and Lions, obviously, I think this is a big weekend for them. for the Lions, probably arguably their hardest clash before they then have to go down to Stormers. They've got Cardiff and
this is your hardest fixture. Or I think probably the most crucial because a bit of momentum now going into it.
Yeah, well, I think Lions win this. I don't see them dropping Cardiff, and I think they're playing against Dragons or something. I don't think it's a side in the top. As Glasgow Warriors, actually, I like completely, but I think it'll be a rotated Glasgow Warriors side. I'm hoping it'll be a rotated Glasgow Warriors side.
So, you better hope the Glasgow Warriors rotate their side. That's a huge game. And yeah, I mean, they're outside shots. If it's not a South African team to win, actually, Glasgow Warriors is going to be my second team now. I want
they've been my second team since the first weekend of URC. They played in the first URC game Friday night. I watched
piping up, bro, and they're top two.
Do you know what the nice thing is? I've got the receipts. I can pull out the watch along from 2 years ago.
Go find it, bro. Go find it.
I will find it.
Everyone's on the Glasgow train. I mean, I'm jumping on the train. I'll admit it.
That's fine. You're 2 years late, dude.
I wasn't a believer, but now I am. Stevie, speaking of fixtures, Autumn Nation Series rugby, we've got some exciting fixtures lined up. The Boks have gone what seems like a very typical route that they've been doing recently.
Standard England, standard Wales, and then just somebody else, which has been Scotland often the case.
Yeah, so we've got the Boks versus Scotland in Murrayfield, then versus England in Twickenham, and then Boks versus Wales at the Principality. We understand why there was no Ireland, but terribly frustrated that we don't have at least a France or Italy. I just find that those games, especially Italy now, such an exciting team to play against. I think we could have put out a decent outfit versus them and would have been an incredibly exciting game to watch. And I just love watching the Italians right now. Like, who doesn't? And the same kind of goes for the French. I guess it's just now based off of the World Cup, it feels like there's a lot more heat in this rivalry now, and we kind of want to, continue that, and just one of the biggest names in rugby. So it's a pity we're not playing that. I feel like I'm also just bummed that we're only playing 3 and not any more. Otherwise, a couple of exciting fixtures outside of the box.
Yeah, look, the New Zealand fixtures are unreal. They've got England, Ireland, France, and Italy. So I think that doesn't, at the end of year tour, doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I would have chosen.
Yeah, no. So I think that they've gotten it very right. Australia have got England, Wales, Ireland, and Scotland. So there's not a bad tour at all. Obviously, some of the other Australian sides, Georgia's is scattered in amongst there. Japan's got a couple of nice games in there.
Going to be great.
Yeah. I think Argentina, Italy should be quite a lot of fun as well. Wales, Fiji could be quite a cool game as well these days. You kind of look at who's really the favourites there. It's good to see Portugal be involved. They've got a game against Scotland.
Yeah, I'm also
it's nice to see a couple of
see how Australia get on. To be honest,
yeah,
there's been a lot of movement.
Well, it's their last prep before the British and Irish Lions. So it's So whereas South Africa, for example, when people are talking about when you bring up blood new players, probably for me the Autumn Internationals is when it makes the most sense. For Australia, well, this is now getting that final, not necessarily the final, but that's about putting everything in place to try and be competitive come sort of June, July next year.
Yeah. So they've got England, Wales, Scotland, and then Ireland. So sticking it kind of in the UK and surrounds, but essentially all the British and Irish Lions teams as well. So maybe that's a tactical play from them, just being able to suss out those players that they're going to be coming up against. But it's always a great time of year, just when it's just the afternoon or weekend of rugby mayhem. Thoroughly looking forward to that. But Stevie, let's get on to the football. As I mentioned, Liverpool, my boys, buying out of Europe in just a horrible fashion, going 1-0 up in the first 5 minutes. Looks like this miraculous comeback, only to not score another goal in the for the rest of the game, losing 3-1 on aggregate. But we're not here to speak about Europa. The FA Cup this weekend, Stevie, you must have been filled with a whole lot of emotions. Talk to me about Man United's performance versus Coventry.
I feel like it was very much a game that summed up our season. 3-0, 2-0 are very comfortable, 3-0. Then a poor defender, but a reasonable goal for the first. And then much like you mentioned, United luck with injuries, a ridiculous deflected goal for their second. And then a penalty decision, which if you look at Saturday and Jack Grealish, the handball that wasn't even looked at. I don't know if you saw it, but he was in the wall.
Yes, yeah. I thought that was ridiculous.
That's what I'm saying. They didn't even look at that. And then you look at the one on Sunday against Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's running at full tilt, trying to get back, he's trying to move his arm unnaturally, by the way, as you would in running, trying to move his arm in behind his thing, and that becomes a Stonewall penalty. Jack Grealish.
I still think it probably was a pen. But
I always look at these, and I think this is a very interesting thing for officials, because you kind of sit there saying, defenders have arms, they're human. What are they? Because you can't run with your arms behind your back.
Of course, but there's a handball rule, Stevie, and if it hits your hand away from your body, I empathize with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but again,
for me, I think the away from the body also needs to be relooked at, because that's away from your body. Is this away from your body?
But no,
and they deal with the natural and unnatural position, because it becomes so difficult. You look at, you guys got that penalty against Spurs in that Champions League final, and I think it was Dembele was pointing at someone and then was there, and you're sitting there going, okay, well, and doesn't need to necessarily be there. But I think it's becoming so difficult for defenders these days, because you kind of have to run around in the box with your hands behind your backs, where you can't actually fully run and stuff like that, because you've got because anytime it hits the hand, it's now a penalty. I think it's become such a fine. It used to be a fine line. Now there's no line. Unless your hand is attached to your body, it's a Stonewall pen. Unless you're Jack Grealish, in which case nothing happens.
I feel like they've been getting, for the most part, that rule pretty decently now, because I feel like now it's up until this weekend, maybe it feels.
Well, there's nothing really to interpret. If it hits their hand, it's a penalty.
Yes, but I think the point is leaving as little gray area as possible helps, because when you get too subjective, and the issue with football is that almost all calls are subjective calls. How much contact was there for the foul? Where was your hand? A lot of these things, like, has the ball gone completely out on the touchline, even, for example? These are things that's kind of like you're trying to make an objective call on something that is a subjective call. And I think the clearer line you have in the sand in terms of, it's come now with the offside rule, right? With the technology that's there. And VAR is trying to figure out, and there've been a hell of a lot of kinks with VAR, feels like over 5 seasons now. But there feels like there's a decent grasp on that. I have no idea why the Jack Grealish one wasn't given, because that was just completely
that becomes the problem, isn't it? Because there are so many that aren't being given.
The swaying of what they haven't seen on field just doesn't. I think it was given a goal kick, to be honest. I don't even think they gave a corner. So that clearly played into it. The ref clearly completely missed it, and VAR didn't have the balls to show up. And I think that's happening too often, when VAR is just kind of seeing oh, no one noticed that, right? We can just remain in the darkness. It's exactly what happened when Spurs, with the Spurs-Liverpool game early on in the season, when Luis Diaz was onside, they absolutely butchered it, and they thought they could just get away with it, because they were like, well, the game's continued. I hope no one notices that. And instead of
unless you're Nottingham Forest, who just decided to release club statement after club statement after club statement, accusing a ref of being corrupt. I thought it was a wild accusation.
Yeah, you had to empathize. Did you see all 3 of Ashley Young's penalties that he should have given away?
I think the issue is not so much just is not so much calling out the officials. Arteta's done it. Klopp's done it. Majority of the clubs this season have been on the end of a thing. But to go and sit there and say, we alert to the fact that he's a Luton fan, you're now questioning the integrity. There's one thing to question the competence of someone is one thing. The integrity of someone, that's a wild accusation.
No, it's a low. And they're going through it. The Forest management is in a bit of a disarray at the moment, but it's not a good look. But geez, some of those penalty shots were ridiculous. And Ashley Young had the smug, had enough smug on his face to say, no, none of them were pens after the game as well. Which was
gotta back yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I guess fair enough. Maybe that's a good segue to actually just get into what happened in the Prem this last weekend. Some notable results were Everton winning 2-0 versus Forest, with those 3 possible penalties that Forest would have gotten. Could have been a Chris Wood hat-trick.
I mean, as far as feeling like hard done by, I mean, I empathize with Forest, but you've got an Everton side who every single time they get outside the relegation zone get handed more flipping point deductions. Whilst Man City with their 130 odd charges just at the top, about to win another Premier League. So I'm more than on Everton. If Sean Dyche keeps them up despite all the crap that's gone out, that's one of the most unreal managerial feats of the Premier League.
There's a battle of the points deducted teams there with Forest versus Everton. But Arsenal getting the job done versus Wolves, simple 2-0 win there. Palace have found some crazy form towards the end of the season.
Couple players are back. That Marco Lees is a really nice player.
Oh, he's so good. Even Mateta. Mateta gets around it. He is a bit of everywhere. He's just a bit of a thorn.
There's good players in that Palace side.
Properly good. Lise, Eze, no, they like the talent. Everyone thought they would miss Zaha massively, but they're so exciting. I really like this Palace team, but they just go missing for like 5 weeks on end, lose a bunch of 1-0s, and then when they play, boy, did they play. And then Villa staying firmly in the top 4 race, coming from 1 goal down to win 3-1 at home versus Villa, and then Liverpool getting the job done 3-1 away versus Fulham. And not to mention Arsenal with the blowout win versus Chelsea. We actually didn't even touch on the second FA Cup game. Chelsea losing to Manchester City 1-0. To be fair, I feel like having now seen this performance versus Arsenal and losing 5-0 in the Prem, obviously there was no Cole Palmer there last night, but I mean, I think they've signed off on the season. They've said, we are out. And we've seen this before from Chelsea. We saw it when Frank Lampard was there for the second time. Those Oaks did not care about the results. They were like, just get me to next season. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a couple more blowout losses for Chelsea for the rest of the season. They have nothing to play for. They aren't involved. They don't seem very inspired. There's just, if they were going to win something, it would have been versus Manchester City, a Saturday game following City playing extra time versus Real Madrid in the Champions League and losing on penalties. They would have been dilapidated. They were leggy. I mean, Man City weren't good, right? No. Chelsea.
It's probably the worst City have played the entire season, to be honest.
And I'm so sad that it wasn't a bloody Premier League fixture, because that was in the league. City were dropping points there. Just Chelsea just didn't have enough to kind of get it done, unfortunately for the rest of us. So it does set up a Manchester derby for the FA Cup final.
Which is the same time as the EPCR Champions Cup final. I mean, how's that for fixture?
No.
Yeah.
And it's at the London Stadium. So
so you got
you're going to have Wembley and the London Stadium.
No, it's Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
No, Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is what I mean.
Yeah, so it's at Spurs and at Wembley. I mean, I don't understand why the FA Cup final is on a Saturday.
Yeah, it's usually a Sunday.
I think I moved a couple of years ago, but anyway, back to the Sundays, guys. Back to the Sundays. Saturdays for rugby, Sundays for footy.
Yes, exactly. Anyways, it's always the worst one for me, is the Manchester derby. I always enjoy watching it, hoping for a draw, and now it's a cup game, so that cannot happen, unfortunately. But Steve, we quickly touched on it. Real Madrid edging out Man City, and they've booted them out of their own competition in the Champions League. I mean, Madrid were somehow got themselves to penalties. One goal from Kevin De Bruyne and one big sitter missed from Kevin De Bruyne in normal time. No goals in extra time, but Real winning 4-3 on pens. I mean, they just know how to get it done, don't they?
Well, it's Real Madrid. It's their competition, It's and Ancelotti. I'm loving the videos and stuff like that of all the Pep's tactics versus Ancelotti's good vibes.
Yeah,
and he just does. He finds a way. Yeah, exactly. Keep the players happy. It's a world class squad. I mean, let's not give it back. But you can also see it's a squad that it's a really good environment as well, and never underestimate that. So it's an interesting. I mean, look, Bayern beating Arsenal as well. Typical, Harry Kane dumping them out of the Champions League. Things you love to see. Then you've got PSG and Dortmund going through. So it's an interesting Final Four. I mean, obviously irritating that's Madrid Bayern in the semis because that could have been the perfect final.
But I mean, still all big teams. I mean, 2 German teams, which is massive. Both of which aren't winning Bundesliga.
The Bundesliga, yeah.
Which actually just goes to show the strength of the German league. I mean, all English teams have been kicked out of Europe, bar Villa in the Conference League. So a bit of a hit on the English teams who've been flying high in the last couple of years. But yeah, Bayern, Real Madrid, everyone said this side of the draw, that's going to be the eventual winner. I don't think you can write off Dortmund or PSG, particularly, I think over 2 legs I would have backed Bayern and Real Madrid, but over 1 leg, anything can happen, and that's what the final is going to be. So, I mean, if Kylian Mbappe decides to have a day, he decides to have a day. He's scored a World Cup, he's won a World Cup, he's also scored a World Cup final hat-trick. The man knows how to step up to a big occasion. And Dortmund are looking like they're jamming as well, coming from behind to beat Atletico in that tie of theirs. So it's the Champions League and it's the final, and anything can happen.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how sort of it all plays out. I think Bayern, who have underperformed, are feeling under a lot of pressure to rock up and get the job done. I think they are probably, for me, the side that probably can beat Madrid. Look, PSG, I think obviously you can never write them off, but again, it becomes a bit of a thing, doesn't it? It becomes that sort of that monkey on the back that you can't get off, that you just don't do well in Europe, for example. Whereas your teams like a Madrid and a Bayern, they've been there, they've won that. It's ingrained in there. That's the minimum. A Bayern Munich sets off to win the Champions League, and they're expected to win the Champions League, and if they don't, managers get sacked. Things happen, players get sold. That's exactly same thing as Real Madrid. That's what they measure themselves on. Whereas PSG have always tried to measure themselves on the Champions League success, but they haven't had enough success for it to really be that warranted. To be honest,
yeah. I mean, they've gotten through some, a tough Barcelona to beat, and so it seemed like they always kind of just rolled over when it did get a little bit tough. Dortmund's going to be huge. Obviously, it's a very, very tough place to go away from home versus a very kind of well-knit Dortmund side. But, I mean, it's the best competition in the world for football. There's, nothing beats it. So, I mean, this time next week, we'll be gearing up for a Tuesday, Wednesday special in the evening that we thoroughly look forward to. Stevie, IPL, we've passed the halfway mark. Believe it or not.
I mean, flipping, thank the Pope. We're almost there. I think it's basically like ends in like June. I mean, it's just the most ridiculous tournament
so
ever.
Long.
I think the final is on the 26th of May.
Yeah, but to recap how the season's going, Rajasthan Royals still sitting firmly on top, only 1 loss for them, followed by Kolkata Knight Riders, and they shared 10 points with Kolkata Knight Riders, Sunrisers Hyderabad, and Lucknow Super Giants, all of which are looking decent. Then just 2 points behind, it's shared by Gujarat Titans and CSK. Mumbai, Delhi, Punjab, and RCB are kind of looking a bit off it. RCB only 1 win from their 8, 5 losses on the bounce. Looked like an unassailable position versus KKR. I think they needed 18 off the final over. Mitch Stark going for runs in the first 3, and then just coming in clutch, getting I think it was wicket or something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just the momentum that you're kind of taking when you're getting on those winning spells, or if you are RCB, can't kind of get the monkey off the back in terms of breaking a losing spell. But I almost feel that my team is in theory the Delhi Capitals, but I feel like I've inherited high Sunrisers just because they have the most South Africans and the Sunrisers Eastern Cape and the Sunrisers Eastern Cape, my boys. But Stevie, a bit of a interesting one. If you have a look at the orange and purple cap standings, orange cap, for those who don't know, is the leading run scorer, which, funnily enough, as we mentioned last week, is still Virat Kohli, the batsman from the team right at the bottom, followed by Gaikwad and Travis Head.
So I have a controversial opinion on these over here. Is runs versus strike rate like the big debate? So, for example, Virat Kohli has scored more runs than Travis Head. I would argue that Travis Head has been the best batsman in the IPL and has contributed the most to the IPL.
Yeah.
In terms of what he's done to his team. I mean, they're both opening batsmen, and Travis Head has put Sunrisers Hyderabad. I mean, they raised 100 in basically the power play the other day. I mean, it's disgusting what they're doing.
You also have to consider the batting lineup that Travis Head has behind him, that he's given license.
No, 100%. But I just think this is raising a very interesting concept in the future, where I think contributions will not be as simple as who scored the most runs. You know, I think strike.
It used to be only runs. Now it's considered along with your strike rate.
Yeah.
Because previously it was purely runs. I think now you have to look at how those runs were made. And as you said, when Travis Head has gone off, which he has a handful of times, and as you said, I would agree, probably the best batsman at this IPL. I don't think the other teams won a single game just because he's scoring at a rate of knots and just breaks the back of the opposition bowling lineup.
Yeah, and I think, ironically, in this particular IPL, I mean, how many scores of 200 plus, 250 plus are we now seeing? For example, back in the day, 130 was considered an all right strike rate for T20. That's not good enough. You have to be, if you're not striking at 150 and even more. People were saying, and somebody said the other day, they said 100 off 75 balls is not good enough. If you're getting up to 100, you've got to be doing it in max of like 60 balls, because you're eating up deliveries. That for me is what's become so ridiculous. The fact that because there's so many explosive batsmen, is that if you are there as an opening batsman, 100 of 75, you're actually, all you've done is eaten up 15 deliveries that somebody else could have dispatched. It's becoming that mental.
Yeah, and you look at some of the big scores, and you almost, as soon as you see a big score like that, you expect to see like 100 and an 80 from someone, right?
Yeah.
Actually not. It's lots of 20s, lots of 25s, a 30 here and there, but all of
it's like 30 of like 8 balls, it's just like mental.
These ridiculous quick fire knocks, and it's just like you have enough. There aren't that many balls, so people are just given license. So it's a lot of small contributions, and people are like willing to give away their wicket if they are going after it, and being rewarded, I think, also by the selectors, if they are going for it, not worrying if they're losing the wicket, because if they score 20 of 6 balls, that is success. Like, you can't write that off as a failure. That is a massive success. But for me, Stevie, the big worrying thing is that if you look at the orange cap race, only one South African, Heinrich Klaasen, and he's only really had, to be honest, 1 or 2 big knocks. So he's sitting in 15th position with 268 runs. High score.
Yeah, I think suffering from being too low down the order, really. I think that Sunrise, that Sunrise Hyderabad lineup is so good. Yeah. Well, genuinely, but it's. I mean, you look and Abhishek Sharma's there in that top 20, and he comes in as well often before Claassen. So, yeah, I think Claassen's, where he was really lucky in the first few 4 games, he was coming in at about 11th, 12th over, which is exactly what he wants to.
Yeah.
So I don't think. He's averaging 53. Striking at 198. So his numbers are still ridiculously good. But I think lately hasn't had the same sort of chance.
Could we see a open though? Could we see
I don't
him
think
open?
he will. No, I think he plays spin so well.
Yeah,
and I think that especially at Sunrise Hyderabad, where you've got everything so sorted. I mean, I don't think they're worried, for example.
They don't need to change much. No.
Yeah, but because they do know if there is a bit of a shuffle and he's coming in at 19 overs, he can take a game away from people.
Yeah.
Aidan Markham's had a bit of a slow last couple of games, but I'm sure he'll come right. Tristan Stubbs as well, but I think a lot of these South African sides. I mean, you look at none of our batsmen. It's only them that really are in any of the teams in the top sort of 5.
Yeah,
because most of our batsmen are sitting down. I mean, you've got Stubbs down in Delhi, you've got Faf back down in RCB, for example, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's just Quinton and our Sunrisers, group who are waving the flag high, and then we've got old Keshav and Nandre at the top there from a bowling perspective, who could potentially win us the RPL title.
True. But if we get into the purple cap, at least there's a bit of a bit more to be excited about. Joe could see us sitting nicely in 5th position, and his feels like a breakthrough IPL season for him. KG Rabada sitting in 10th as well, which at an economy of 8.3 for this IPL is ridiculous. I mean, only really bettered in the top 10 by Jasprit Bumrah, and that's just because it's Jasprit Bumrah. He's just the best bowler in the world, at least in T20s and arguably in all 3 formats. But I'll still stand by my boy KG. But other than that, also not too many South Africans. But and when we have seen South Africans, very expensive. You think of Anrich Nokia. Obviously, he's only returning back from injury now. I mean, even Coetzee is been very expensive. Economy of 10.5. At least he is picking up wickets, but it does feel like a lot of South Africans have a lot of those wicket-taking bowlers. If you think of Shamsi, Coetzee, Nokia, but they're bloody expensive. Not even Rabada that used to be in that bracket. He seems to be bringing down that economy now, which is what we need. Keshav obviously does incredibly well to generally keep it pretty low. But yeah, I mean, the season's long enough that we could be speaking about South Africans all in the top conversations of top later on in the season.
We still have another month of cricket, more than a month of cricket.
We're not down and out by any means, but not exactly, waving the flag as high as we had hoped, at least at this point. But a lot of cricket to play, as they say. Stevie, shall we get on to some predictions for this week?
Yes.
And are you happy to go with the same format?
Well, I know you want to.
Well, listen, if I go back to back, then we know something's up, and we know that you've been hustling behind the scenes some way, somehow. Not quite sure. Maybe you've got some sort of early transcript coming through. But I mean, let's try it. We're going to be predicting on the Lions Munster game, the Stormers versus Leinster, and then North London Derby, Spurs versus Arsenal. Stevie, shall we start with Lions Munster?
Yeah, happy to do it.
You got a number in your head?
I do have a number.
Okay. You count us down.
Okay, right. We'll go for 3, 2, 1, and then your prediction, eh?
Team by points.
Yeah. Okay. So 3, 2, 1, Lions by 5.
By 3.
Okay, cool. That's fine. Just now I'm going to back Leinster as well after that.
I'm happy for you too. Okay. So I've gone Munster by 3. Give us some thoughts ahead of that game, Stevie.
I think the Lions at home this season have generally been very, very difficult to beat. They have lost 1 or 2 games here and there, but I think they're playing with so much confidence at the moment that I think that I think this is their big game. So for me, what I think was a big thing last week is I thought that the Bulls didn't manage to really use, especially scrumming, for example. I don't think they managed to use their set piece to as good an advantage. The Lions' lineup was an absolute disaster, but we do have the best scrum in the competition. So I think that for me could be
That's
a
a wild
massive,
shout, actually.
statistically backed up. But who am I to judge?
I'm trying to think of other scrums. You just said it out of the blue. I just didn't see it coming, bro. There just hasn't been any chatter. I mean, Slabakanya time is Slabakanya time. And there's no one I enjoy watching more on a Saturday than him. But, geez, okay, fair enough. You do have a strong pack, to be fair. Couldn't say the same for the line out, but we'll keep it solid at scrum time.
We've got a 96% scrum win.
Wow.
So
that's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
So it is the only Leinster second with 94, and then Cardiff with down there. So we statistically do have the best scrum. So Julian Redding-Hayes, in case anybody didn't know, he will be taking over from Don Human in probably 4 years' time. It's not official yet, but it's for me. I mean, I don't understand how the Lions keep signing such arbitrary props, and I mean, our current pack consists of Asnat and Klabakanya, who I think probably will play through mocks. But apart from that, you've got a Morgan O'Dea, who's a youngster nobody knows about. We brought in JP Smith and his twin brother, both one from Major League Rugby, and the other one was sort of floating around Super Rugby, but not playing. And that is the core of what has become the best scrum in the competition. And you think of some of the front rowers across the other side.
Not exactly household names. Then you take a look at the Shark scrum, Vincent Koch, Oxenchain,
Boggy, Intunu, Currie Oosthuizen.
Like the list goes on. Just now they're going to add Trevor to that. I mean, it's a bit of a joke. But yeah, I mean, I think, as we mentioned earlier, must win for Lions. Munster, if they want to have a shot, maybe top 2, they got to get it. They have momentum of having now one on the road. Can they do it again? Bulls and Lions, that'll be a hell of a way to cap off a tour there. But let's get into the second match, Stevie. Stormers versus Leinster. I've got a number in my head. Tell me when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. You can kind of start with this time.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Stormers by
12. The 7. Jeepers. Well, I watched this Leinster side, and the Lions didn't play very well and beat them very comfortably. So I expect you guys to beat them. The only thing I do think is I think this Leinster side will get better, having played against the Lions.
Yeah, I feel like they didn't quite get rewarded as much as they probably should have, and the points showed. And I'm still worried about the Stormers. Listen, I'd love to be wrong, and to be honest, it's actually quite embarrassing because I feel like you get all the Stormers ones correct, even when you bid higher Stormers than me. But I'm worried. I'd like the Stormers to pounce back. Whether they do or not, we're not sure. So you had a Stormers by 12. I had Stormers by 7. I mean, again, it's a big game for Stormers. I hope they've put out a really good team. I think that's another thing that's really plagued the Stormers. So much rotation. It just really has never been the same team. I think the squad's too big for me there. I think they need to shed people. They seem to just be signing so many people in so many positions. And I believe that it's also leading just to people feeling unsettled and people being promised minutes, not always getting minutes. I do like squad depth, but I'm not sure. I think it feels like there are a couple positions where it's maybe one too many. Why are you shaking your head?
Because the Lions have got like one hooker in the entire bloody franchise. We've got like 2 locks, and you're busy complaining about having too many players. Yeah, well, give it to us. Who do you want to offload? I'll take JJ Kotzer. Thank you very much. I'll take a lock off your hands. I don't know which one you want to give me. I'll take a lock off your hands. I'll take a loose forward off your hands very gladly.
I was surprised you didn't take Sasha off our hands, by the way.
I would have taken him. Yeah. We'll take Dan Duplessis off your hands if you want.
No,
plenty of players I wouldn't mind.
We'll keep Dan Duplessis. I think on the wings we have too many. Anyway, then that's probably where you don't need help, to be fair. But let's get into the last match, Stevie. the North London Derby, Spurs versus Arsenal, title race versus top four, Spurs hosting them, which does definitely kind of make it a bit of a 50-50 in terms of how you think it might go. You got a score in mind?
So we're going to score and then person there. So, 1-0.
So we'll go score team.
Okay. Yeah. It's going to be controversial, but we'll move.
Okay. Huge. Okay. I'll count us in. 3, 2, 1, 2-2.
2-1 Spurs. You're going to have 2-2.
2-2. 2-2.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad shout, to be fair. I just can't back an Arsenal. I've had so much crap with my Arsenal fans the entire season.
You got Spurs 2-1.
Yeah, I've always preferred Spurs as a team, to be fair. And
because they win this.
Well, it's just dude, that Spurs team back in back when I was in high school of Modric and Bale and all the buggers, dude, Van der Vaart. It was so much fun to watch them back in the OG days when they dusted Inter Milan.
Yeah,
but I also think it would just be the funniest narrative for Arsenal's title dreams to officially come crumbling down at the hands of Spurs.
Yeah, I think Man City's still sitting on top at the moment, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
They
haven't played 2 games, so they've got 2. So Arsenal's on top.
Arsenal's on top, but yeah, they're 2 games.
So
if City
so
win
the table
both, they'll take them 2 points ahead.
Yes, they go back. Yeah, so it's Arsenal. It's Arsenal 77, Pool 74, City 73, City 32 games, Liverpool 33, and Arsenal 34.
Yeah.
So City play tomorrow. So if they win tomorrow, then they go 1 point behind Arsenal, with a game in hand. And Liverpool, I think you guys playing tonight, I assume.
No, we are.
Yeah, to Everton tonight.
We are. You are right. It's a Merseyside.
Come up at Everton. Come on, with Sean Dyche.
Yeah, you're so right. Those nights, and then it's Brighton, City away. I mean, they've been traveling. I mean, I'm just hoping that they're still leggy. From that, Brighton don't have much to play for, which is never good.
Yeah, Brighton season's pretty much done.
But Brighton are Brighton, and they come out of nowhere. It feels like they've disappeared for a little while, to be fair. We haven't really been much shock fixtures from them. But early on in the season, they were a proper powerhouse, kind of taking down some big teams and, potentially even a top 6 run in them, but kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. But come on, De Zerbi, just derail City. I do think it helps Arsenal. It helps getting fixtures out of the way early, because now all pressure's on Man City. In this title race, it makes such a difference playing, even if you're playing on the same day, playing earlier. Because if you're tied on points and you see, let's say it's Arsenal, Liverpool tied on points, and Arsenal play first and they get the job done. Liverpool, you have nothing to play for. You have no edge. Yeah. All you can do is get a win and equal on points. So I think those motivating factors, and it's completely luck of the draw, right? It's a bit like at what point in the season you play a particular team. Like they could be going through a good spell, they could be going through a bad spell. Like it's just complete luck, and that's it's like you just hope at this end of the season you play earlier than than the people you're going up against. So that should make for some good watching this evening, and then this weekend West Ham, Liverpool, Nottingham Forest versus City, and then obviously the North London Derby. That Nottingham Forest versus City is straight after the North London Derby, and Liverpool playing early kickoff on a Saturday. And I do not like early kickoff as much as I've just preached about playing before your opposition, but I'll take it just because of the circumstance of kind of this title race.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting run-in because that catch-up game of Verticommas for City comes against Spurs. So it is a midweek game before the final weekend. The thing is, though, I think Spurs. It all depends. Look, you got Villa, Liverpool a day before, so that's. It's actually this is really it, isn't it? Man United, Arsenal, 12th of May, Villa, Liverpool, 13th of May, Spurs, City, 14th of May. That's it, isn't it? That's the season.
Yeah.
because the final weekend is Arsenal, Everton, Liverpool, Wolves, and City, West Ham. So it's probably Arsenal probably the hardest result in terms of Everton maybe fighting for the last day. Staying, but also at the same time, by that stage they could have stayed up. West Ham are up, Wolves, know, so it could very well be a game of those three teams, those opposition having nothing to play for. And so I think that second week of May is going to be those three fixtures. Boom, boom, boom will probably be the deciders.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good run, and still it feels like Liverpool are 6 points off it, to be honest. And I don't know if we'll get anywhere close, but like it's still close at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And this is the most stretched feels like City are ever going to be because of the amount of fixtures they've had back to back to back. And other than that, they can just focus now on the Premier League. They don't have to worry about Champions League and then the FA Cup finals after the season's done anyways, and they'll take that as a bonus. But everything will be geared towards the Premier League now for them, so that's always a bit worrying.
Yeah, so the thing for City is that if they can get through tomorrow and Sunday, then they've got a week off. Well, then they play again the following Saturday, for example. So they get a full 5-6 days.
And to be fair, they have Brighton and Forest, so they would expect to both away, which is tougher, but they would expect to. But let's see how it goes. Crunch end of the season, crunch end of the rugby, crunch end of the football. Not quite crunch end of the IPL. That'll come at some point, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
Does it just go on forever?
Perhaps? Yeah, when we start wrapping up the Autumn Nation series with the box in November, we can talk about who's in the IPL final.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe there'll be a South African batsman in the top 10 at that point. But Stevie, thank you very much. That's been episode 14 of Between Two Fans, covering the biggest news in rugby, football, and cricket. Thank you so much, Stevie. That was fun. I was very sad coming into this, and I feel like now I've turned the corner on the predictions game. I finally got off that bloody 2. I've been stuck on. I think it was since 6-2 or even 5-2. I've been stuck there. So I'm working my way back, and I think I'm going to catch you. But everyone, thank you very much for watching. Please do smash a like on the video or share the podcast to your friends and family and those who will enjoy listening along as much as you have. But thank you very much for watching. We'll check in next week.
Yeah, always fun. Thanks, Scholtz. See you.